Hold up. I see no changes. I wake up every morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? So I blast myself. I'm tired of being born, even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to stash. Cops give a damn about a Negro. Pull the trigger, kill a nigga, he a hero. Get a crack to the kids, who the hell cares? One less hungry mouth full of welfare. First ship them, don't let them deal the brothers. Give them guns, step back and watch them kill each other. It's time to fight back, that's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark, now Huey's dead. Oh man!
You on it, yo?
Right on.
Straight up.
Is that what's up?
That's what's up.
Come on, y'all give Theo some love. We about to get this in. Man, Tupac.
Right. He doing
Tupac.
Let's go.
I heard Tupac got a new album coming out.
He probably do. I wouldn't be surprised.
Is Tupac dead?
You know what? I sometimes don't believe it. I think that brother just has so much juju in his spirit. You know what I'm saying? They buried him with a mic, and that's how his albums keep on coming out. That's my hypothesis on why Tupac got bars to this day. 2019, let's go.
2019, let's go.
Already.
I think Tupac's gonna get another album out.
Bruh, if he do, you know the street's gonna be hot.
Because you know the greatest of all time. Well, first, Theo.
Yo, what's good?
Before we get into this greatest of all time and all the rest of the things we're going to talk about, I need you to hit him with that trigger alert.
Yo, listen. This is a show that triggers people because you have entered a free think zone.
That's right.
If you are not willing to be exposed to other viewpoints, view this and tune on out. And don't read the comments. You have been warned specifically.
You've been warned. Say like I advertido.
That's
my Espanol. That's my Espanol.
Yeah.
My Espanol is on fleek.
Yup.
It's my Espanol.
He teaching courses.
Now listen, y'all need to get in my Espanol course.
He changed something every time he said it.
Well, y'all know what I mean. See, words are expressions of ideas that form in the mind.
Come on.
And then they're an agreement in terms of what that sound connotates. And if you agree on the sound, then that kind of comes together as a language.
Come on now. See the science?
You see the science?
He just dropped it on y'all.
Okay, Black History Month 2019. Theo Wilson is in the building. Let's give him some love. You know, real quick, Theo, you infiltrated some white supremacist organizations online.
Yes, sir.
And you know, you got national and international attention for this activity or your ability to infiltrate, you know, folks who spew hate and, you know, at the end of the day, don't want to see us on the planet. Why don't you just, for those who may not know that story, kind of tap into that?
Bro, I didn't think it was a big deal. It was remarkably easy to do online. So this ain't like Black Klansman, you had to get a white dude to do it for you. This was something that was a reflection of my own online activity because I was putting out Black Lives Matter content. Everybody, you know, the black folks liked it and the white folks started trolling me. And I realized that there was fake accounts. There was an echo chamber going on the internet. So I just decided to duplicate the bubble. Went in there, did that while working in the community, while coming to your events, while being sure that I was available to my own people. And it was a quiet thing. It was secret and I shut it down. I didn't think it was worth anything. Then I did a TED Talk about it, and it went viral, and I'm speaking at schools now. So that's how that happened, man.
You said there was a bubble on the internet. What do you mean there was a bubble?
Man, this is a term called target marketing algorithms. And in English, that means if you click on something, the internet tries to give you more of that very same thing so that you keep on buying. It worked with your shopping, but it worked with news as well. So if you click on liberal, left-leaning, or Black Lives content, the algorithm has got a program that'll give you more of that. And then everybody that you know and like talks about the same things, thinks the same way as you do, so before you know it, you're in a bubble. And that's how a lot of people didn't see Trump's election coming because they was in their bubble, and then the internet on their side had its own bubble. So, yeah, it's a powerful thing. You got to know you live in an echo chamber in order to break out of it.
Well, what about this social media world where, you know, how is this conforming our thinking then? Because if you're getting content that conforms to your everyday worldview, then you might be having socially engineered thoughts coming in. How does this work?
Brother, one of the interesting things about Donald Trump is the Russians. And what the Russians did was they created fake black social media accounts because they analyzed America and they figured out that there are already existing fracture lines. So they basically reversed COINTELPRO on us. And the hackers went in and exacerbated the racial fracture lines. So yes, we actually did remotely get socially engineered by many Russian bot accounts who created Black Lives Matter content so that we actually could get more charged up because they saw that as an opportunity to divide a country that they could not beat militarily.
Well, they also talked about they had what would you wouldn't call them hackers, you're calling them trolls and some other kind of things. Those that would come in to suppress the black interest in politics and voting in general. So they had the ability to suppress participation.
Well, yeah, because we have a hopelessness thing that we actually do have in this country. It is no, should I say, secret that we have been suppressed voter-wise. I remember my first year at Florida A&M University, my boys got turned away an hour early from the election. Everything felt rigged. Everything felt like, what is the point of participating at all? And so, yeah, a lot of that was actually to convince black folks that voting did not matter. And it was successful for a whole lot of us. So, yeah, that's been a part of this whole internet, should we say, mind brainwashing situation that we live in today.
Wow. Well, I tell you, Theo Wilson, scholar, activist. I mean, there's so many things that you do. It's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly all the things that you're involved in. But going to Black History 2019, it's time to fight back. That's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark. Now Huey's dead.
Right.
Break that one down.
Brother, a lot of times we as black folks get hard on ourselves because of the lack of leadership in the community. We have to understand that no other community's rise to power was opposed so violently as ours. And they decided that they figured out the strategy. Kill the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. And so that happened multiple times. And of course, that warrior energy was still there, and the Black Panthers devolved into the gangsters that we know today. And so that's been a very major thing that we have to contend with. And unconsciously, we understand that to face white supremacy directly, oftentimes is to face their military might, their schemes, and their plots. And so, yeah, that was engineered. And we have to figure out how to evolve past that set of opposition.
But you said the Black Panther Party devolved into the what?
A lot of the gangs, man, especially on the West Coast. What it was it's always good to have wise folks at the head of your warriors. When Bunchy Carter gets killed, you know what I'm saying? When, of course, Huey, he was taken out later on in the 80s. But you got folks like Fred Hampton getting killed. What that does is they sort of breaking the line of succession. Breaking the line of succession of the leaders. And then they infiltrated the cocaine in the gang. And then that warrior energy just didn't have anywhere to go. And so once the leadership was taken out, unfortunately, they devolved. A lot of the energy, you know what I'm saying, didn't exactly know where to go. And of course, a lot of the dope boys was agents at the time, you know what I'm saying? So they ended up baiting a lot of the good black minds away from the struggle. So it was orchestrated, engineered. They knew that drugs could destroy communities ever since the opium wars that Britain waged against Asia. And so now they figure, well, they reverse that strategy on us.
Wow.
in the community.
Well, keep going. I'll tell you, Theo, what I want to talk to you about today is this word that keeps coming up. I see it everywhere. It seems to be pronounced. And I'm hearing a lot more of it, within our community. Yeah. And it's this term called Shahada. Are you ready for it? Shahada's like, yeah. Here we go with Shahada. You don't have this excited look on your face about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Staj, Samaya, you heard of it? Toxic masculinity?
Yeah.
Gerald, you heard of toxic masculinity?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, so Theo.
Yeah, brother.
For those of us who are not really in the loop in terms, it seems as though it's a wave. What is this toxic masculinity? How has it become such a conversation? Is it just in our community or is it widespread? Is it part of the Me Too movement? What's going on? Break down toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity is a term that got introduced into the lexicon of America and in this now 4th wave of feminism. So feminism has had several waves. This is the 4th one right now. And fourth wave feminism has been calling the culture of male dominance into culture, and I mean, into question. And I think rightly so. I can tell you this: the conversation around Me Too, the conversation around toxic masculinity has, I believe, been productive in certain ways. And having brothers ask questions of themselves, because a black man in America, you see yourself, rightfully so, as an oppressed party. And a lot of times we never really got the chance to ask ourselves, well, could we actually sometimes be oppressors towards our women? You know what I mean? With the whole surviving R. Kelly thing coming out, all this stuff about Bill Cosby and the talk about predation in the communities. I know personally it's been an examination that I had to ask of myself as a brother who's trying to evolve to do the right thing. So yeah, did I absolutely exhibit traits of toxic masculinity? 100%. I don't think that you could be a traumatized black man in America having your masculinity always attacked, always undercut by this society and not pick up some of the toxic traits that were modeled for us by the male colonizer. So I think that that's one of the things that people forget. Like they like to target in on black men a lot of times as the main purveyors of toxic masculinity. Yet and still, we learned this version after being under the whip. We learned this version of masculinity after being emasculated systemically through centuries. And so I think that it's good that we're asking those questions. Do we deserve to be the face of all things toxic masculine? Can somebody say school shooter? Like, that's toxic masculinity too, you know what I'm saying? Now, not to negate what we got going on in our communities, but let's recontextualize it and have the discussion in general and with honesty.
I gotta back this thing all the way up for just a second. Shahada, I'm throwing it in reverse. I'm throwing this thing in reverse.
Oh, man.
Because when you say feminism to someone like me, and in the black community, I know a lot of sisters ain't rolling with that term feminist.
Oh, Lord.
As a matter of fact, the number one hater of black men historically, who has been at the forefront of getting black men killed, has been that white woman. And they were very, very, very opposed to black women in their struggle historically as it relates to voting rights, etc., this whole equality thing. And I think more than 50% of those white women voted for Trump, who said grab them by the vagina and kiss them in the mouth.
He wasn't so articulate as that.
Well,
political terminology.
He didn't use that
at all.
But the point I'm making is when you attach the word fourth wave feminism and you say feminism, that kind of, for the black community in many regards, click. Click.
Yeah, I don't know.
Shahada, you a feminist?
Not at all.
So,
Hey,
but I mean,
but I say I'm not a feminist in the general sense of the term, because I find a lot of things that they champion are not realistic or speak to my experience.
But I mean, okay, so the point I'm making, and everything you said about what men should be doing, I agree with. If you're exhibiting any behaviors that are, to the deficit or the, impacts other individuals negatively, we need to examine that. I got that. And women need to examine it on the other side of that as well. But when you said fourth wave feminism, I'm not sure white women should be putting up any titles, tags, or taglines for black folks. Well, I'm not sure.
Look, you got a decent point, because what happens is, if a movement comes from the dominant class, it's tainted by it. Okay? Now, first wave feminism, nobody really historically can argue with it. This has been a patriarchal society. There's no question about that. You know what I'm saying? And when we were talking about women having the right to vote, when women have the right to have ownership of their bodies, nobody could dispute that. That has been a historical inequality. We as men in a patriarchal society, even though we were oppressed in that patriarchal society, got raised up in it, which is different than African matriarchal society. We can get into that if you want to. Well, we were purveyors of that as well. So, of course, if you love your women, and if you want them to rise, and you're not gonna, then you're not going to, should I say, stand in the way of their liberation. What we're talking about in this last wave, I believe, the Me Too movement, and I know a lot of sisters who have had issues with the white women wearing the pussy hats and whatnot, you know what I mean? And that kind of feminism, there's been a rift between black womanists and white feminists, and I think that has to be examined. But since I'm a man, I kind of leave that to them. I focus more on the part that I could do as a brother.
Well,
You know
the
what I'm
point that I'm focusing on is right now this term toxic masculinity.
Yes, sir.
And how it has made its way into the black community. We're having this discussion, and if it was ushered in by white women as a label for us to examine, I got some questions. I got questions.
You're suspect of, okay.
And the reason is because white women and black women, they ain't in no kumbaya moment, and historically, they have been at odds, period. And so, for the white woman to bring in a conversation with black men as it relates perhaps to black women, unless they're talking about how black men are treating them in their interracial kind of dialogues, interactions, etc., then that might be a valid point. But if they're steering the conversation between black men and black women, I don't know. I got questions.
Right, that's
got questions.
I mean, certainly that term was coined outside of the community. Now let's look. There's two sides to every coin. All right, and we're gonna look at what's positive and productive about it. Then we go into the negative. Here's what I got productive out of the term toxic masculinity. Here's what I got out of it. Right, as a brother, I had to examine certain behaviors that I was doing. You see what I'm saying? And that comes from the fracturing of men. Now, look, when you're a little boy, right, you get tackled for the first time. You get punched in the face for the first time. What do your boys tell you? It's all right, bruh. Let it out. Is that what they say? No, they be like, shut up. Quit that crying, bruh. Buck up. Cowboy up, right? And so what does that do? It has men in a place where they suppress and compartmentalize their emotions. Those compartments can take on lives of their own. I know it certainly did with me. You see what I'm saying? So that caused some destruction in my life that I'm glad that this conversation had me examine. And there were sisters in the community, black feminist women in the community. All right, Lady Speech was one of them. Dominique Christina was another one who actually held me in my brokenness and made me examine what can I do as a man to upright myself from what I've learned from my colonizer. You see what I'm saying? What I learned from the slavery experience, what's been passed down to me as black men tried to assert their masculinity against the most brutal military force that the world has ever known. What I have a problem with is when black masculinity and white masculinity get placed on the same playing field, because they're not. Historically, they're not. The type of masculinity that it takes to rise against a slave master is not the kind of masculinity that the slave master exhibits. So when we get lumped into that conversation, the kind of masculinity that black men have exerted, heck, has it been toxic? Bruh, I grew up on hip hop. Yeah, the F word got thrown around all the time and whatnot, right? But when you look at how that kind of manhood was created, and then you look at the true masculine cats like Malcolm X, when you look at cats who had true psychological masculinity, like Huey Newton, like Martin Luther King, though he was an imperfect cat. The kind of masculinity that they are afraid of in black men is the kind of moral uprightness that stands against oppression. And so then that all got lumped into the same thing. And I think that a lot of conversation around masculinity has tried to lump black men and white men in the same category, ignoring the fact that like we're a wounded class too and trying to get our stuff right. And if we care about y'all, then we care about how we affect our sisters. Ooh. But they're not on the same playing field.
Go ahead. Like my man Theo breaking this thing down. The trigger alert has gone out. So, man, I got questions. I'm really interested in this term toxic masculinity, how it's making its way within our community. If you are enjoying this conversation, this platform, we need you to go to brotherjeff.com right now and make a donation of 7 donations, any amount. Shahada, it doesn't matter how much. Just put, as they say, just put something on it. Just put something on it.
Put 5 on it.
7 donations. Go to brotherjeff.com, or we're working our way towards 40 Patreon friends. So go to patreon.com. And I'm going to tell you, because of your support, we've done something interesting as well. Many people say they like the podcast. They even call it a podcast. But now you can go to Google Play and iTunes and look at Brother Jeff's podcast, and you can download the shows. You can do straight up. You could podcast.
That's what's up.
So we're putting them out there for you, but we need your support to continue doing this work. And toxic masculinity. Now, I'm trying to figure out what has happened or what has changed, because our existence as it has come in contact with white civilization, and particularly on these shores, has been toxic.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't create a system based on the enslavement of people, and we're talking about our people in this context, and think that you're getting something that is not toxic, that's going to be passed down. So when you think of those relationships, those individuals who look at white norms as the pinnacle, as the standard, and you see openly what's being exhibited today.
Yeah.
If that's what we've been ascribing to, then that has not been new. Toxic masculinity is in the DNA of this country.
It can't be any other way. When I look at the colonizer, the conquest of this country, and I say that was not a healthy person. Because healthy people don't need to enslave folks. Healthy people don't need to commit genocide. Healthy people don't need to create systems of exploitation, okay? So I think that we have to look at when we get to adopting the norms of the society and using the white American measuring stick to measure how well we're doing, I think you can always get lost in that. I think what's interesting is that now we have a conversation in our hands where we as oppressed folks, as folks who know what the lash feels like, who knows what the shackle feels like, who knows what the police bullet feels like, we get to examine how we are with each other. And I think that that's a healthy conversation. We as men have healthy conversations around that. And I think that with Shop Talk Live, the conversation that we've had in our barbershops, which is Marbella Barbershops and Quality Care Hair, we actually go into the nitty gritty of what that looks like. But me as somebody who's out there trying to make these conversations happen, can't do anything unless I ask myself the hard questions. So as you know, we're undercover, so I know how to play devil's advocate on both sides. All right? That's the kind of brain that I've been blessed with. I can actually see both sides of what that looks like, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, I guess that's a Gemini trait as well, right?
Oh, you're a Gemini?
Yeah, two times. That's 2 times. Right?
Shahad is a Gemini.
Yeah.
Samaya, what's your sign?
Virgo.
That's Mercury.
Gerald.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
So what that look like on the positive end is the reason why the toxic masculinity conversation is so important is because you got to look at how we modeled ourselves after colonizing men. Look at how even rappers model themselves after mobsters. You know what I'm saying? Call themselves Capone, Noriega, you know what I'm saying? Gotti and all that, right? These models that we have of men came from broken, unhealthy men. So now what did the society look like before we were colonized? I think that's interesting.
Well, I want to touch on that because I want to touch a little bit on this piece about toxic masculinity and how those who represent that are rewarded in a toxic system.
Correct.
So the individuals you're talking about that are doing all of these different things and are being rewarded and celebrated and pushed forward on platforms, I think that that is also social engineering, because there are a lot of black men, and I would argue many more, that do not hold those values to be central to themselves, their family, and their community. But when you turn on the toxic masculinity system of communication, he's going to show you, you know,
the worst of the worst.
He's going to show you the worst of the worst with you and the best of the best with him. I think one step in our movement should be ignoring the system in terms of the bubble it wants to create for us and to define us as such.
How did it get turned on? You say...
How did it get turned on? Well, look, bro, how you know, like, when can you actually trace the beginning of that? I mean, look here, bro. You can look at it in hip-hop, right? Hip-hop started off as party music. We all know the hip-hop, the hip-hop, hip-hop, you all right? You know what I'm saying? What got incentivized in the late 90s is what I'm asking. You see what I'm saying? What got the backing of the corporate structure of the music distributors? You see what I'm saying? And why did they back that? So, I remember in the mid-90s, hip-hop was a plethora of very varied styles. You had everything from NWA to West Coast Snoop and Dre, right? The Tribe Called Quest, you know what I'm saying? You had Scarface coming up from the Dirty South, Outkast, you had all that. There was a plethora of things that you could draw from, right? Over time, what got incentivized was the worst of the worst, to the point where I know rappers who have bars about life, bars uplifting women, bars respecting community, but when it comes time to get that deal,
Right.
They put on that dope and that trapping music. You see what I'm saying? So that's just how it works. So our culture, which came about organically, hip hop came about organically from the conditions in the Bronx and whatnot, right? But then when the corporate structure put its perverse hand on it, it perverted the art itself. And so that then made us start rapping for deals and rapping for a culture that actually got steered away from us and its origins and its
This
roots
is
in the
this
beginning.
is so deep. I mean, Theo, you always expand where I'm going and my growth. I don't think Shahada's convinced right now in terms of the toxic masculinity. But the point I'm making is when we talk about entertainment, and that's what I call hip hop music or whatever I consume for entertainment. As an adult, I can separate my values from some of the things that I'm enjoying in music or on the screen, just as some folks watch more movies, they do all those different things. So I don't necessarily fault music for shaping, you know, my way of life and my way of being, because I can differentiate from some of that. I can go around the planet and tell you that women are oppressed most everywhere you find men. And so even if there wasn't a plantation, and if we didn't even have that experience, and I don't want to call them plantations because that brings up visions of mint juleps and, you know, the dancing, shuffling, happy Negroes, kind of Negroes. Those were terror camps, all that oppressive, whatever it is. Even barring all of that, everywhere I travel, I see women being oppressed by men. It's like, what's going on with that? I don't think it's unique to our community, this country. I think there's a global epidemic as it relates to the oppression and suppression of women.
I think you're right, but also the conquest of the world by the European was also a global thing. So just like you find oppression of women everywhere, you also find colorism and a hierarchy from light to dark everywhere. All of these things have their fallouts in that kind of origin. So I think that if you look at indigenous societies here in the Native Americas, when you look at African societies, they were matriarchal and matrilineal. You know what I'm saying? That we kind of retained some of that with the concept of the big mama and whatnot, you know what I mean? But what we look at before this happened was these very same people oppressing their women. You could look at the Congo, for example, some of the worst examples of violent oppression of men towards women. But where'd they learn it? Well, they learned it under King Leopold. They learned it when Leopold came in and killed 10 million Africans and set up structures by which he could control them using the men against the women. So that's Willie Lynch. But if you look at before that, you got to understand that this was something that is unnatural to us.
So you're saying this was introduced
This was absolutely
into our culture, into the continent via the interaction with the European powers.
Well, most, you understand the continent's a gigantic place,
Of
right?
course.
So there's all sorts of different tribal structures.
But
right?
but the entire continent was split up
That's
via
right.
the scramble for Africa,
Correct.
etc., and carved and all of that. So all of it has had its interaction.
Correct. All of it has.
with the European powers.
Yeah.
And what they call Ethiopia beat back the Italians, etc., and was
They
not
still had an
colonized,
interaction
but they
with them.
still had this interaction. But saying that, you're saying there was a utopian kind of society where there was equilibrium between man and woman, harmony, etc., until that interruption.
If you look at the writings of the Portuguese of the great city of Benin, they talk about how not only did they not have locks on the doors, but they didn't even have doors. They talk about how they could ride for miles through African kingdoms without getting robbed, couldn't ride 2 miles through Britain without somebody trying to rob them. That looks like utopia, and you're talking about the European writings. So we also see preservation of the old structures within the society. Kingship, for example, could only come through the woman. You know what I'm saying? Women have more freedom with their bodies, and therefore you have to actually track lineage through the woman, not the man. And brothers really didn't have a problem with that, because a woman in ownership of her body is a free woman. You see what I'm saying? So therefore, this artificial premium that gets placed on sexual gratification gets removed, because patriarchy is the one that made sexuality something that had to be under lock and key, something that women had to be ashamed of. When we were free, you didn't have rape culture. You see what I'm saying? So I'm telling brothers, you actually want to go back to matriarchy if you actually know what's good for you. You know what I'm saying? So, but you have to know this. You have to study. It's a great book called Sex at Dawn by Christopher Ryan is an amazing book that talks about pre-colonial attitudes and division of power between men and women. You see it in the Amazon, you see it in sub-Saharan Africa, you see it in the Philippines, you see it in certain parts of Southeast Asia as well. So, and parts of China as well. Some of these societies still exist. So when you know that, then you have something to contrast it to, and then you see how far off base we are. Now, what you can't do is rely on the same person who taught you toxic masculinity to unteach you toxic
Now,
masculinity.
I want to stop right there because hold on. I want you to pick up that thought, but I want to start right there. Because when we started with the fourth wave of feminism and them introducing this concept or this discussion into our community, I could get it if we were talking about black male-female relationships and how that's working and what we're doing around them. And also, other ways relationships are happening in our community. If it's a community conversation, I think we will be better poised to move that conversation forward because you showed that when we had interaction with those European ideas, it began to fracture our societies, our communities. So when you have the fourth wave of these feminists introducing these conversations,
like feminists, I'll be like,
I'm gonna say that. Yeah, I want you to feel that. I'm just saying, when it becomes their interest to have a play in our conversations, then that same fracture can happen because the problem white women had with white men is very different than perhaps the conversation that black men and black women and black other relationships are going to have. And we've been having these conversations.
But I think that we also are negating the fact that when the family structure has changed and women are going more into the workforce, there's a paradigm shift, right? Everything is different. So I feel like toxic masculinity feeds into that. When people talk about toxic masculinity, it's about how men relate to women.
Is it just men, or is it just men and women?
You're talking about boys, girls, or whatever. Now they say if somebody reaches out to hug your daughter, that she shouldn't have to. That's part of it. The masculinity is that, go hug that man. Go hug Brother Jeff. But she doesn't have to hug.
So the term is toxic.
Toxic.
This is what we're focusing on, the toxic element. And when you gave examples of manhood, you talked about Dr. King, you talked about Malcolm, you talked about...
Dr. King with some provisions, we understand. But still,
all men, everybody with some provisions, some provisions, because that pure man, whatever that might be unpure in the sights of somebody else's values and norms. But the men you mentioned in terms of their masculinity, the toxic white masculinity had those men murdered.
Killed. And here's the difference. I'll say, to sum it down, because people like toxic masculinity, well, what's healthy masculinity? What does that look like? And the way that I could break it down is toxic masculinity seeks to master the world. Healthy masculinity seeks to master the self. That's the difference. And so the kind of masculinity that they were afraid of in black men, and all of these cats had some significant flaws that played out in their personal lives, but the kind that they had in common was the kind of principled, dignified, upright manhood that says that you cannot do this to my community. You cannot do this to my children, and you will not do this to my women. That's the thing that they had to be taken out. So let's say you remove that kind of masculinity, but you still have in a toxic form, and let's say he's willing to fight, but only his own people. Let's say he's willing to rise up, but only against his own woman when she gets quote unquote mouthy, in quotes, right? Well, then you don't have the kind of masculinity that is upright, strong, spiritually grounded masculinity. That masculinity that I found that I had to re-find in myself as I destroyed many things in my life on a personal level. I said, okay, so you got this world that opened up to you after your video went viral and you got on CNN and all this stuff like that, and it fed an unhealthy part of me. I had a non-mastery of my own behavior in certain ways that torpedoed beautiful things in my life, right? So therefore, the healthy masculinity in me was, dude, focus on mastering yourself. Because you can master the world, and if you ain't got mastery of yourself, you'll lose it all. Ask Genghis Khan. You see what I'm saying? So that's where, that's I believe where we need to start focusing on. Getting control of our unconsciously learned behavior that came from, and we can point out the source all we want to, but it's up to us as brothers in our community to say, okay, let me get a handle on me real quick. And by the way, just because I can articulate this doesn't mean that I've got it all the way down. Just because I can say these words doesn't mean that my battle is over. My battle is still very much in play and will be for the rest of my life. Now, when the powerful step on my part is I had to embrace this battle is going to be upon you for the rest of your life. But the direction is healthy masculinity seeks to master itself. Toxic masculinity seeks only to master the world.
Well, I like what you're saying, and a lot of what you seem to be saying is a part of growing into what we call human potential.
Yes, sir.
You began crawling, and then at some point you walk, and then you run.
Yeah.
You were mastered by your lower nature, and then your so-called more animalistic kind of behaviors, and then given the opportunity, you grow into the human potential.
Correct.
Now, if that is a normal process, and you have good, healthy men, mentors, and guidance, etc., then there's a progression.
Correct.
But it sounds like what you are talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds very powerful. There was something happening in our community. And when I talk to you, I talk about our community.
Yeah.
Of course, we're a part of other communities, but right now I'm talking about
the black community, the descendants of slaves. Yes.
Okay, so there was an upset between you and whatever, and some women in our community pulled you aside, and you reflected on said conversations, whatever that was, which led to some self-reflection, to even saying that you course corrected, that you'll continue to do, and you talk about it openly on platforms like this in a broader context.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I would say that's what community looks like.
All right.
But if someone is saying that people are not falling down and some people are not living up to their best potential, and as some way they are flawed and they need to be cast aside because they're irredeemable, then that whoever's making that kind of assessment is toxic in the way they're even presenting the argument. So a toxic person can call you toxic while being toxic themselves.
I've seen that happen as well. What that is that the source of the toxicity is the unhealed wounds. All of it is. And when you are dealing with unhealed wounds, sometimes when you're wounded, you'll see a situation and don't know that you got your wounded glasses on. And your wounded glasses are coloring what's out there right before you. And then you cannot see actually objectively what to do and then how to make that situation better. And so I think that if you got to know when you're operating from your triggers. And that takes self-reflection, that takes time. You know what I'm saying? That takes a ability to be mirror-minded, to look within and say, this is something that is more my stuff than that person's stuff, okay? Community seeks to build up while holding accountable. But if you're part of the element that says these people should be all the way forever cast aside, now certain people have shown ridiculous patterns of irredeemability. Some people, given the proper opportunity, can fall down and then rise again. So it's up to us to make that discernment. But I would say that I certainly have heard voices that just want to throw brothers away altogether. You know what I'm saying? Brothers away as a concept altogether. And I would wonder if you're not subconsciously playing into a little bit of Willie Lynch right there.
Well, I can tell you, I'm just asking questions.
I would wonder. You
and
know what I'm saying?
I think that they're powerful questions to be asked. Let's expand this conversation a little bit further. And by the way, I need 6 people to go to brotherjeff.com. Make a donation of any amount. We'll keep making those requests. Let's take it beyond the black community. Let's take this toxic masculinity into the context of what we're seeing in this country, the Me Too movement, how this is playing off in the rise of these, the women waves, the stronger role of women being played in the broader society and breaking these ceilings, etc. How is toxic masculinity being defined on a larger level, and how is it being handled?
Well, right now, I tell you, a lot of powerful guys are losing their heads. They're losing their ability to be influencers, as we've seen time and time again, white and black. You know what I'm saying? Harvey Weinstein, you know, he may not be in jail, but he certainly has been deplatformed. You know what I'm saying? Everything from R. Kelly, Bill Cosby, you name it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Bill O'Reilly, gone. You know what I'm saying? Roger Ailes at Fox News was gone before he died. So this is a good thing because you cannot create heaven making hell for somebody else. And that's what privilege does.
Is there a thing called toxic womanility?
Oh, Lord. I now see toxic femininity.
Is there a toxic femininity? Is there another side
That's
of
like
this?
calling somebody black racist. Come on now.
Well,
So
I mean,
no.
yo.
No.
No.
Not in a patriarchal
In a
society.
patriarchal
You
world,
can't-
there's
in a
no
world.
toxic. That's what Shahada says.
I would say that let's say that there is a form of, like, okay, why do men do what they do, right? Limp Bizkit said, I did it all for the nookie, right? That's what he said. Meaning that there are ways in which if men are doing a toxic thing for the approval of a certain type of woman or a certain mindset of a woman. So if he's getting all these rims, if he's selling all this dope, if he's trying to be Scarface in order to please what women? You see what I'm saying? Because that kind of behavior wouldn't impress Angela Davis. That kind of behavior wouldn't impress Michelle Alexander and Michelle Obama. They're not looking for that kind of man, right? So what kind of woman is this toxic dude trying to impress? If that woman is not examining why she wants to be a part of his toxicity, could she be considered at least a reinforcement mechanism of toxic masculinity?
In white male patriarchy society, and you're seeing all these powerful so-called men falling based on behaviors that they exhibited, weren't they just doing what America does?
America has always been a taker. It's always been a rapist. It's always been an exploiter. And there's a part of your soul that has to be silenced sometimes if you want to succeed at that level. And so, yeah, these are all learned behaviors, though. That's what's so interesting about that. Work with children, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, work with kids. And you will see that a lot of the kids, their adult selves are being formed in their childhood. I know people in therapy now for stuff that affected them in elementary and middle school. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of the way to uproot this is to actually be conscious of how these triggers first affect kids so that they don't end up going those routes. I know for me personally, and the toxic, you will call it toxic masculinity all you want. It was toxic behavior that I was exhibiting. It was screwed up behavior. And a lot of it was just me operating from ugly black boy syndrome. That's what I had. Didn't think I was beautiful. Didn't think I was handsome. You see what I'm saying? And so when I started getting all this female attention, it wasn't really me reacting to it. It's the little boy from middle school. You feel me? And so oftentimes, also when it comes to violence, you know what I'm saying, among brothers, a lot of times that we exhibit these toxic masculine traits, but we are an unhealed child triggering another dude's unhealed child, but you got grown men bodies and grown men tools now. You see what I'm saying? So when we got it, and that takes self-reflection, that takes looking back. And that also takes looking forward into how we're protecting our children from certain things that will lead them to be the kind of adults that perpetuate these nasty toxic cycles.
Well, I think socially, these United States of America were formed out of a toxic philosophy, and it impacts man, woman, child, and everybody got some of this mess on them. And for any portion of that society to say that's that portion of that society and not my portion of the society, I think they're deceiving themselves. I want to ask delusional. I want to ask this question because what we're calling toxic masculinity as it relates, and I want to move it from man to woman, from man to man. The way we fight and kill one another is not just toxic masculinity, that's programming, and it's rooted in fear and terrorism because we never often pursue that same behavior with those that openly oppress us every day.
Now that's
There's a stop sign right there.
That is real talk, brother. You know, and like that's why I be like, you know, these brothers talking about this click clack and this all this. I was like, yeah, you do that to me because I'm black. Do that to the cops. Do that to the judge if you that gangster, right? So it's easy because we got internalized self-hate. It's easy to kill your reflection when you hate the one who makes the reflection.
You're programmed to kill yourselves.
Exactly. So that's going to show up regardless because that's called proximity murder. You see what I'm saying? Poor people kill poor people. It just is what it is.
No, black. There are poor people that kill poor people, and there are things in proximity that do happen. But black folks, black men have not raised up and went across town to do nothing based on what was being inflicted upon us
Yeah.
on a regular basis, which would level the playing field. Now we're talking about man to man. What does a black man, and I'm not talking about a toxic man, what does a black man look like in this society?
In society, it looks like a protector, a provider, somebody who's benevolent enough to have themselves in check enough to allow other people under their charge to thrive.
Now, where is that shown, exhibited, and celebrated daily for the society to consume, to where young men would grow up to say, that's what I want to be in relationship to me and my community?
I mean, sometimes as teachers, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes as mentors at the rec center, sometimes as fathers that don't get no love. Like sometimes there are unsung heroes in that. Unfortunately, there don't seem to be a lot of mainstream media portrayals of that kind of manhood a lot. You know what I mean? So there are brothers and sisters right here making an impact, that's quiet impact, but meaningful impact. And I think there's unsung heroes in this city, brothers specifically, who are exhibiting an upright kind of manhood all day long, but just never get no light on them. You know what I'm saying? However, is that incentivized? Is that monetized? Not as much as it needs to be.
Well, in your first examples, that type of man is also assassinated.
That common man is
That type of man that would raise up, advocate 100% for his own
people
and his own community and the likes, and willing to protest and protect that at, to the end, is not welcomed and is often hunted out, scoped out, and eliminated so you could continue to produce sheep.
And Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talked about that in her book, The ISIS Papers. This was the late 70s. She goes around interviewing young black boys. And she said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they said, oh, I want to be like, at the time, O.J. Simpson, who was a running back at that moment, right? You know what I'm saying? Or they want to be like Muhammad Ali or somebody. Or they want to be like a sports figure or an entertainer. You know what I mean? They want to be like Sidney Poitier or some stuff. And she was like, well, don't you want to be a leader like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X? And the little boys were like, I don't want to be that. They always get killed.
Yeah.
Now, Frances Cress Welsing knew that in the late 70s. So, the kind of manhood that has been placed before us has been entertainer, athlete, and now rapper kind of manhood, right? But that kind of upright moral fortitude, the kind that will defend their community against oppression, that specific brand of black masculinity, who often showed up in imperfect men, by the way, that has been cultured out of us by the bullet, and we have to acknowledge that and have compassion.
Cultured out of us by the bullet. What would we call that? Except terrorism.
Yep, terrorism.
Black folks have been terrorized, and it's amazing that we are able to overcome terrorism and still function and have a beautiful vision for the future in the midst of what we've gone through. And like Taj says, and I agree with him, the black man in his fullness is not shown anywhere on platforms that are created by white men, because they're not going to celebrate you in a way that is going to put a shadow on them. And so until we begin to build our own and celebrate our own, then we're going to have to continue to carry our hat in our hand to somebody else to say, would you allow me to show this to my community?
And you know what's interesting, man?
And that's not manhood.
Yeah.
That's toxic manhood.
Straight up.
When you don't take care of yourself and your family and your community and your surroundings, and your children feel safe and everybody in there has a role in that community, everything else is toxic.
The warrior's job is to defend the defenseless, not turn war against the defenseless. And that's what Dr. Abayomi Meeks taught me. Another upstanding brother, another brother who actually stood up for his community, taught the young boys how to fight and how to live in peace. And of course, he was not amplified in any main platform, but that is correct. A warrior's job is to protect those who cannot protect themselves.
Now, I can tell you what kind of some of the disconnect that happens in our community, and I can understand why. The black woman is getting tired of shouldering so much of this responsibility. And as a result, you start to have this kind of tension because we're not walking side by side. One is always in the front, one is always in the back. If we want to rise up, and if you look at some of those struggles that you're talking about, civil rights struggle, black power, freedom movement, all of that stuff, those leaders were exhibiting white patriarchal molds of leadership and had some ideas that they needed to suppress women in order to be men.
Yeah.
And it's a conundrum.
I think that it's a conundrum, and so this is where I welcome the movement. This is where I welcome fourth wave feminism, because of the conversation that it started. I welcome it. I think that if you as a brother don't understand the place that black women have had in the entire scope of our struggle, then you don't understand how to deal with the present moment. Now, I think this is also relevant. If you was to go to a chicken coop, go to the chicken coop, and you ask them chickens, what is the biggest problem in your life?
What is it?
The chicken will say, these damn chickens. These chickens, all of these chickens pecking at my food, these chickens pecking at me, I ain't got no feathers because of these damn chickens. Ask them about the farmer. He said, the farmer's my friend. The farmer is the one who takes care of me, right? They don't understand that the reason why they think that the chicken is their problem is because they're living in an unnatural condition. So when we get to pecking at each other, when we get to coming at each other the way that we do, we don't realize that because we are living in an unnatural condition. Of course, we're living in filth, we're living in ghettos, we're living in the things that don't perpetuate and that are not originated from our cultural mindset. So yeah, from the immediate scope, yeah, the chicken is your problem, but your biggest problem is the farm and the farmers. And until we see it like that, then we think that the person next to us is our biggest problem. And in fact, it's not. They're going through the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility and try to make things better for our own community, but understand the greater context of what you're dealing with.
Well, I think
Africans have their own government, and they're doing their toxic masculinity.
That's because they are all colonized minded. You gotta understand, like all of these brothers, they're speaking the language of the colonizer. First of all, that's how you know that the colonizer in Africa still has his footprint in there, and they learn generationally masculinity, especially in the Congo. Let's look at the Congo. They learned it from Leopold. So what was their other versions of Leopold? What was their other versions of that? When you look at pre-colonial, it wasn't a paradise. By all means, there was different tribes with different customs. But you don't see what's happening now.
Well, I can tell you this. In terms of every people and every culture, they all have their problems. The bigger problem is when you have someone from another culture come in to say they're there to solve your problems, and your problems continue to grow, and everywhere you look, those who say they're there to help are constantly in charge of solving your problems. That's toxic from the other standpoint, and from those who allow others to address and be front and center in their communities and in their problems. I think that's the result of terrorism, internalized white supremacy, a low self-esteem, and a whole bunch of other situations as well. And for the feminists out there, and when I say feminism, I'm not saying it in a derogatory term. I'm talking about the leaders that may be white, that think that they are the drivers of the conversation within the black community as it relates to black women and black men. You are not the originator of the toxic masculinity conversation in our community. You may have taken it over like you took over the Me Too movement, which was started by a black woman, and now all of a sudden it's driven by some other elements. Black men have been having this conversation, and I could tell you in our generation in 1996, we had 1 million black men go to Washington, D.C., which became the Day of Atonement. And a big part of that conversation was the relationship between black men and their families, driven by black men. There's a pledge, there's a blueprint, there's an everything available even as we think of that. So if you go through time, black folks have been working to solve our own problems ever since we realized we've had a problem. So I don't want you feminists to walk away thinking that you've done a great favor by being the driving force of perhaps anything in our community. I can really tell you that many of the clashes that we've had as black men, the big ones came because white women were lying, saying that they were raped when they were in consensual relationships with black men, which were taboo relationships, and to save their own kind of neck, self-esteem, their chivalry,
Their lives
they
sometimes.
their lives. They pointed to the black
Purity.
man, their purity, and said they're doing something against my will.
That's a major thing, brother. I gotta just say this, man. I'll be hoping that we actually can have the conversation and take notes from what our women are telling us.
Absolutely.
The Me Too movement was founded by the sister because she wanted to take into account and bring attention to interfamilial molestation that happens to, unfortunately, too many of our young people. You see what I'm saying? That was what Me Too was originally about. She wanted to take a look inside of our community and see what's going on so that we can actually bring this to the light and solve it together as a community, all right? So even Me Too was started within the black community to solve our own problems.
Well, I'll tell you this. You've got some more. Before you get out of here, can we give Theo a round of applause? Driving a huge conversation. I want to give you the final words, but I want to also talk about you got Dr. Boyce Watkins.
We got Dr. Boyce
The
Watkins.
return of Dr. Boyce Watkins. Now, the last time you brought him within a coalition of leaders, which was an example of black men, black women working together. You packed the audience. A lot of folks didn't even know Dr. Boyce Watkins was coming. So now you're going to give them a little leeway to put it on their calendar. Who's Dr. Boyce Watkins? Where is he going to be? And how can people get in touch with you if they choose to want to participate in that program?
Right.
Shop Talk Live Inc. Colorado. If you go to our Facebook page, we have the pre-sign-ups. They're already happening. It's an amazing thing. So you can order your tickets with the link that we have provided for the event. If you go to Shop Talk Live Inc. Colorado, we're still looking for vendors. So if you want to be a vendor at the Boyce Watkins Emancipation and Liberation event, 400 years since 1619, coming to you it's going to be on the Anschutz Medical Campus. We have the information, like I said, at shoptalklive.org. And so we got a whole day planned out for you. It ain't just talking about Boyce Watkins. We got Minority Cannabis coming. We have Fly Nubian Queen panel coming with Michi X and her sister. So Michi X is going to be there. She's going to be dropping that fire as normal.
Hot fire.
You know what I'm saying? Hot fire.
Hot fire.
You know what I mean? So, and we have folks talking about how to get involved in the cannabis industry as somebody who does more than sell weed, but perhaps somebody who's part of the maintenance of it. There's also business opportunities there. And any vendor that wants to get on the main stage, please hit me up. Hit up shoptalkliveinc.colorado. And the final keynote speech will be made by Dr. Boyce Watkins. I already purchased his ticket. He is on his way. We got the contracts going and everything. So thank you very much for that. Like I said, Anschutz Medical Campus. I believe it's the Mount Oxford Auditorium. I believe it's the Mount Oxford Auditorium. And it's going to be, I believe, from it should be from 10 a.m. to like 5 or something like that. All the information's there.
And you'll post it on the link as well.
I'll definitely post it on the link.
Well, I'll tell you, as we close the door on this conversation or open it wider on toxic masculinity, etc., what are the key points you wanted to make, and what did you want people to walk away with as it relates to our conversation about toxic masculinity?
A little slower.
A little slow. I'm sorry. I tend to talk fast. I think that it's a sign of the times. Listen to what our sisters within our community are telling you. And analyze your own heart and behavior. Take accountability for where you dropped the ball, brothers. I know that it's a daily walk since last year, certainly. And it's something that I'm glad to help brothers walk through and understand that healthy masculinity seeks to master the self. Toxic masculinity seeks to master the world. And if you gain the world without mastery of yourself, then you lose the world to begin with. So try to go ahead and look within and see what that looks like. Listen to what our women are telling us, and make sure that when you deal with these kids, you raise healthier folks who can end this cycle right now. It starts within the community. And understand, brothers, it's a lifelong work. It's never going to stop.
Wow.
You know?
My man Theo, putting it down as always.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to give you a Black History Month moment as we walk away from this conversation. A lot of folks talk about matriarchy being a way. Some say patriarchy is the way. But in our tradition, it wasn't either or. Right. It was both together. Now, if you think it's either or, that's going to probably be a lonely walk and a difficult walk. Try to walk with one leg. You can do it. You got to get some assistance. You got to get, some kind of apparatus. There's ways to do it. And if that's how you're doing it, go ahead. But if you go and you look at, we will call it Connect. Your Black History Month lesson today is this. Egypt is in Africa.
First part.
So
First part.
you got to look at that. Some folks don't know Egypt is in Africa. And the reason they don't know it is because they wanted to buttress white supremacy by saying you didn't do anything and you haven't contributed anything, and therefore we can oppress you because you are less than human. But if you look at the monuments in Connect, the black man is sitting next to the black woman and they're both on thrones.
And they're of equal height. Yeah, correct.
They're equal height, they're both on thrones, and so we know something about equality. And so if you're looking for white male patriarchy to give you answers into how to run your community, you're going to have problems. And if you're looking for white women that hate men in general because of the relationship that they've had, and they're going to show you how to function within the black community, you're going to have a problem as well. So as a community, we need to be the center of our own problems, and then we will share our successes with each other, and we will broaden that circle to include other communities, and we will meet each other as equals with other communities. But that patriarchy, that white man's burden, all of that nonsense that has gotten us to 2019 still scratching our head and trying to figure out which way to go.
That's got to end. So yeah, definitely let's work together with each other. Let's start from within to without. And Boyce Watkins coming back February 23rd on the Anschutz campus, Mount Oxford Auditorium. It was packed. Brother, it was packed. Standing room only. Literally, I didn't know he had that many chairs. We was bringing chairs out of nowhere, right?
That's right.
And with that much advertisement. So this one, I don't want y'all to miss out on this one, because a lot of people are like, how come I didn't know about Boyce Watkins? Now you know Boyce Watkins coming back. February 23rd, all right? Emancipation Liberation. Go to shoptalklifeinc.org. If you want to be a vendor, let us know, and we will put y'all on, okay? Thank y'all very much.
Well, to be pro-black doesn't mean you're anti-white or anti-anything. And to have a conversation about toxic masculinity is not to say it is us against them. It sounds to me like we're working to figure out how to be the best we can so that we can share it with others. Gerald.
I think a couple of us are saying, can you say that slow or post it where we can read it, because y'all talking a million miles an hour.
Well, what you'll be able to do is you are now able to go to Brother Jeff Podcast.
Okay.
I will load it up. You can download it on iTunes and Google Play.
Yeah.
Or you can watch this afterwards. And are all hearts clear? Shahada? Samaya, we got more talking to do, don't we?
Well, I think the talking is going to be in what the next steps are to practice, healthy measures to eliminate this toxic masculinity, like you said, with the kids and stuff.
I would love to talk about my process in it. Like I said, you know what I'm saying? It's been a hard journey.
But I've heard
sisters held me accountable. You know what I'm saying?
And there's a sister, Bird.
Reagan Bird has talked about it.
Yeah, she's talked about it.
There are a lot of people that find someone to help you become your better self.
Yeah.
Now, however that looks like, whatever your better self is.
Some people don't know what their better self is. Right. They think that the status quo is what you're supposed to do.
But I think
they're gonna learn one of these.
That's what I'm
like Theo said. Theo said the sisters pulled him aside.
Pull me aside, bro.
So if somebody pulls you aside, go ahead and listen.
Yeah.
See what they're saying.
Yep.
I done pulled plenty aside. That ain't him.
Well, then you gotta leave them by the wayside.
But then you gotta you also gotta think about the fact that if you keep running into toxic men and you keep having relationships with toxic men and you allow that to keep continuing, that toxic kind of thing.
Just about every man I know is come on. Every man that felt the booty and come on. Let's stop with that. That's not true. There's a lot of men, like you said, it's a habit, right? It's something that you've learned. So we run into a lot of those men. And black women, these toxic men claim that they're choosing white women or whatever the case may be.
I ain't choosing that.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Let's say it like this, Shahada. Okay.
Don't use that.
If you know what a toxic man is and you see it coming your way, cross the street. Cross the street. Recognition is the first
thing. You learn toxic masculinity as you know, as a woman, do you think that's normal?
Oh,
It's normal,
That's
right?
the point. So the
That's
healthy
right.
ones need to go and get in there and help. Everybody
Sometimes
get in
healthy
there.
brothers get rejected as lame though.
I mean, he's too nice.
I mean, yeah, he's
too nice.
He's soft, yo. He ain't got
He's
no
soft.
thug in him. You know what I mean? He you know what I'm saying? You got a felony, bro? Well, you can't come this way now. You know what I'm saying? And I was that dude who got passed over by like straight up aggressive, rugged Mac player ass dudes. So out of heartbreak, I adapted their behavior to be successful with women. That became an addiction that I couldn't turn off. You feel me?
Yeah.
But it was that first heartbreak when women passing me up for brothers who had tats and, you know what I'm saying,
We feel
bandanas
the
and shit
same.
like
We
that.
get passed up all the time. I'm a
So-
nice woman. Nobody gives.
I feel you, but okay, so what it was up to me
Right.
to get my life right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it was. But the first time I went toxic was definitely because of heartbreak.
Yeah.
Make that no mistakes about
we
that.
all reject.
You know what I'm
One
saying?
thing is when you grow up, when you go in the grocery store, you get to pick what you know you like.
I ain't got no.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you know,
I don't know.
when you're talking about something, you're talking about choosing
What's up?
the right person.
Somebody starts
If they
swinging at
pass
me,
you
I'll
up,
be
hold
like,
on.
I'm
If
not
they
going.
pass you up because you ain't got no big booty, come on. Or
Now-
too skinny,
now-
huh?
But you know,
That's part of it. I'm just saying. So don't.
there's
you know,
nothing wrong
part of
because
that.
if somebody likes a big booty, somebody likes a little booty. They're all in
Everybody
there.
like a big booty.
Everybody do
Don't
not like a big booty.
Not they not all the same now.
All I can
They
say,
think they supposed to like.
all I can say is,
That's a learned behavior.
if you go down,
Where are we going?
if you go down swinging,
That's what I'm
because you
saying.
just might score a knockout.
You gotta do more.
Thank you, Theo.
That's what's up.
That's a lot.
Might just score a
That's
knockout.
a lot to digest.
Rumble, young man and women.
Man, y'all went into that like at 90 miles an hour, man.
That's a deep conversation.
That's deep as the Atlantic. Who's the greatest of all time? The GOAT hip hop.
Oh, go hip hop, bruh. Sometimes I think it's Black Dot. Sometimes I think it's Pop, man. You know what I'm saying? It's,
We'll come back to discuss this. And by the
God
way,
MC.
shout out to the teachers. I'm rolling with the teachers that are striking.
Woo! Go teachers.
Go teachers.
yeah.